Hi everyone, I'm Benjamin. Welcome to my book club. We're here to talk about Children of Dune, and for the third time, Frank Herbert is going to try and tell us that there's no such thing as a hero. Right off the bat, there's obviously going to be spoilers for Dune and Dune Messiah in this one, so turn back now, you've been warned. So I just finished Children of Dune, and I was shocked, to be fair. I went into it with fairly low expectations. I've seen a lot of people call it a low point in the series, and some people even calling it just not very good. And I couldn't disagree more. I thought this book was great. I think it's heads and shoulders above a lot of other books that I've read, including some books, more recent books, that I think you can draw a direct line of inspiration back to Children of Dune. I finished it, and my overriding sense in that moment was just a hunger for more Frank Herbert writing. Set 21 years after Dune and 9 years after Messiah, the events in Children of Dune follow Lady Jessica's return to Arrakis. She returns for the first time since she left at the end of Dune to find Aaliyah, Paul's sister, and her daughter ruling an empire as regent, waiting for Paul's children to come of age. And the empire is fracturing at the seams. It's tearing itself apart. The Fremen of Arrakis are at the verge of civil war. The Bene Gesserit are in a fit because of the fear of an abomination that they think Aaliyah is. And the spice production is down. The sandworms of Arrakis are dying due to the ecological changes on the planet. Like Messiah did for Dune, Children of Dune again broadens the scope of the story. We see more factions and more characters than we have before. We move away from the Atreides family so much. Not entirely, this is still a story focused on the Atreides, but we move away to see some more characters and some more of the universe, and it's beautiful. Children of Dune is a great story if you like political intrigue and schemes and plots. Not only do we as the reader never quite have a grip on who's working for who and whose aim is what, it seems most of the characters don't either. A lot of the characters get surprised at certain points, realizing that they've been working for a side they didn't realize they were on, or they're working following orders for someone they trust, but they have no idea which side they're on. They don't know what the outcomes are going to be. They don't know what the ambitions are going to be. They don't know that this is going to be a good outcome for them. They just know that these are the orders they've been given. If you don't like being kept in the dark and guessing, you're probably not going to like Children of Dune. It is definitely a plots within plots, schemes within schemes, twists within twists sort of book. And in the hands of a lesser author, it could be very messy, and it could just completely fail and unravel. But Frank Herbert, at least by this stage, is a master of the craft. He kept me guessing from page 1 all the way through the end of the book. He had me gripped and enthralled. Every time there was a reveal, I was shocked and elated. Every time there was betrayal, I was heartbroken. Every scheme and plot comes into its own, and they all twist together into just a fantastic plot, and it's a masterpiece. If you didn't like Dune Messiah because you thought it was too slow, or because you thought it wasn't its own story, its own book, standing apart from the rest of the series, then maybe don't stop. Maybe continue on and read Children of Dune. I think if you liked Dune because it was sort of an adventure story that you enjoyed, you'll probably like Children of Dune. It is, again, that sort of fun and quest adventure story that we had in Dune. We're following different characters this time, but that's only a benefit, I believe. And the outcomes are larger in scope, broader and much further reaching. Even just in the story itself, we see a lot more of Arrakis than we ever have before. We see a lot more of the Fremen society as it currently stands than we saw in, say, Messiah. We even go off to see the heir of the previous emperor off on Seleucus Secundus, the prison planet of the Sardaukar. And the scope of the story is just broader than the previous books. It expands on the universe that the first two books have built up, and it nails it. I read book 1 and 2 and kept reading them because Paul Atreides was such an interesting character and I wanted to follow his story. I finished Children of Dune, and I will go on to read probably the rest of at least Frank Herbert's Dunes, because I care about the universe now. I care about all the planets. I care about Caladan, Seleucus Secundus, Gedi Prime. I care about Arrakis. I care about the people. I care about the Empire. And I care about the stories of all these people in the Empire. I haven't read Game of Thrones, but I've seen the TV show, and Children of Dune reminds me of those early seasons of the show when it was still good, with the plots and the schemes and all the different factions and all their stories loosely brushing against each other but having just huge ramifications. And that's the feeling I got from Children of Dune. Frank Herbert's biggest accomplishment in this book is separating the story of Dune away from Paul Atreides. Paul Atreides is this magnetic, charismatic vacuum for the story of Dune that everything revolves around. Everything in the first two books is about Paul Atreides. But after the events of Dune Messiah, when he walks off into the desert, I was worried that without Paul, I'm not sure there was a lot left after that. The world was interesting, but not as fleshed out as I thought it would need to be. But Children of Dune proves me wrong. The story, if anything, just gets more interesting now that we can move away from this one figurehead character and split the spotlight up among many more. We've got Aaliyah, Paul's sister, Lady Jessica's daughter, a preborn, born with the histories and memories of all of her ancestors and all of the reverend mothers in her line before her. And we have the turmoil that's caused her. She's been abandoned by her mother in a time of great need. Her brothers died. She's been left in charge of an empire. She's been left in charge of the twins. And her mother's just gone. And she has all these other egos in her head. And she's never developed the personality of her own, because ever since she was born, before she was born, she had all of these in her head. Aaliyah's story is tragic and heartbreaking. She might be one of the most tragic characters I've read, at least for a long time. And she seemed, at the start of this book, she seemed at the end of her rope. And finally, her mother's returning. Lady Jessica's coming back to Arrakis for the first time. But as soon as she disembarks, it's clear that she's not here as an ally to Aaliyah. That they are at odds right from the start. It's hinted that Lady Jessica's returned to the Bene Gesserit and is following the Sisterhood's orders again. And that they are still intent on claiming this bloodline, claiming this throne, and accomplishing the goal of their breeding plans that have taken them thousands of years. We see from her as a point of view character a lot in this book, and it's fascinating to see what she thinks of the empire her son conquered and what it did to him and what he did to the empire, the daughter she abandoned and her thoughts and her guilt about abandoning her daughter and the position that her daughter's now in. In this book, she's every bit the calm, sneaky, plotting Bene Gesserit witch that she should be, and we're left guessing at her motivations the entire time. I'm never quite sure whose side Lady Jessica is on. And then at the heart of the story, we have the Children of Dune. We have Paul's twins, Ganima, the daughter that he foresaw in his prophecy, and the son that he didn't see, the Enigma Leto II. Both, again, born as preborns like Aaliyah was, but somehow managing to handle it better. Something to do with always having each other there, I think, and that strong relationship they have, which is just written so beautifully. You can tell that they love and care for each other, and that they are each other's world at this point. Some of my favourite parts of the book are Leto and Ganima talking together or working things out together and making use of their really unique abilities that only they have. Duncan Idaho's back. After last book, with him returning as the Ghouler, he's back with his memories from his flesh returned to him. And he's married Aaliyah. They've decided that they love each other and they got married. But over the 9 years of marriage, he's seen Aaliyah change in her leadership and in her role. And she's seen Aaliyah disappear a bit from the woman that he knew. And then along with the returning Gurney Halleck, whose absence I really missed in Messiah, the two of them struggle with their duty to the Atreides. Here's two of the most loyal Atreides attendants that there's ever been. But without Paul, there is no head of the Atreides house. There's no undisputed Atreides leader. If they're given orders from Lady Jessica, Leto, Ganima, and Aaliyah that all contradict, which Atreides do they follow now? Do they follow Aaliyah because she's the regent? Do they follow the children because they're Paul's heir? Do they follow Lady Jessica because she was the consort to their old duke? It seems more and more likely as the story goes on that Atreides is going to face off against Atreides, and the stories of these two men come into light as they're conflicted with what they're going to do. And then more than in the first two books, this book feels like it's a story about Stilgar. It's got a lot to say about him. At times he's a council member. He's the head of the remaining Fremen. He's been a religious and spiritual leader. He's been a warrior leader. And he's kind of at a loss of what he is anymore. What role does a man like Stilgar fill for the Fremen in this new world? He's pulled between his loyalty to the Empire and his need to do right by his Fremen brothers and sisters. Stilgar is sitting on the council while he watches the destruction of the Fremen way of life. Water has been brought to Arrakis. It rains on Arrakis. Fremen have drowned on Arrakis. And this changes things intrinsically for these people. Some of them have become more isolated, returning more to the old ways before Paul rose to power, while some have been moving to the towns and the cities, living above ground, not wearing their still suits, wearing clothes that expose their skin to the air because water is not this rare resource that it used to be in these places anymore. And we have some of our first off-world characters with Faradun, the descendant of the Empire, of the Emperor that Paul conquered. We've got his scheming mother and his military attendants and a corps of Sardaukar soldiers, and we follow them as House Corrino is angling again perhaps to take the throne. Whereas the overlying theme of Dune Messiah was definitely dread building on page to page to page, there's a core of hope in Children of Dune. It shares a lot of that sort of feeling with the first story where we love these characters and we want things to work out well for them, and we have a feeling that they might be able to. There seems to be a plan at the heart of things that, if accomplished, might lead to that future where everything works out. But as with everything so far in Dune, it really cements Frank Herbert's message that there are no good guys. The Atreides aren't the good guys. The Faradun isn't a good guy. Duncan Idaho isn't a good guy. There are no good and bad guys. There isn't a clear antagonist-protagonist relationship here. Everyone has their own ambitions and goals, and many people are willing to make massive sacrifices for that, be it sacrifices they have to make themselves or sacrificing others and leaving people behind and hurting people. Children of Dune, while I think relies on that story of hope, is beautifully tragic, at times heartbreaking, and is just a gorgeously written story. If you read the first two books, Dune and Dune Messiah, and your only thought is, I want to know what happens to Paul Atreides going forward, then I would say stop. As I said in my Messiah video, I think if the story of Dune to you is the story of Paul Atreides, then Messiah is the perfect stopping point. The ending of Messiah with Paul walking into the desert is a perfect ending for Paul Atreides. Some of the things that happen in Children of Dune do sour that ending a bit for me. But in saying that, I'm really glad I continued, because this book has convinced me that the story of Dune is not and doesn't have to be the story of Paul Atreides. It can be the story of Arrakis, the story of the Empire, the story of the people in this world and what it is they're going to go through. As for a rating, I think I still enjoyed Dune Messiah the most, and I think the first Dune might still be getting some extra points just because of how groundbreaking it is. But I'm very happy to give Children of Dune, I think, a 9 out of 10. I think it earned it. I think it earns a place at the top of any list of fantastic sequels in sci-fi. It builds upon everything the books before did, and it expands the story. It adds new characters, it adds new intrigue, and it leaves me chomping at the bit to continue. I'm absolutely going to continue on to God Emperor of Dune, and I'd be shocked if I don't read at least Heretics of Dune and Chapter House Dune. As for reading the Brian Herbert books, well, I'd love to hear from you in the comments what you think. I am tempted to pick up House Atreides, the first of his books in the Legends trilogy. Let me know if anyone's read them, whether it's kind of worth continuing, probably after a break from Dune. So I'd love to hear in the comments what of the first three, Dune, Messiah, and Children, what's your favourite Dune and why? And maybe why didn't you enjoy the other ones quite as much? If you want to check out some of my other book reviews, the playlist should be right here. I'd love if you could leave a like, and if you like this sort of thing, you could subscribe. And remember to keep reading.